Beep, beep. What is up, ninjas? My name is Sam World. I made a track where the main ideas are loops and I got it signed. Now this track is going to be a collab with my boy Hatinga called Voy, which is out on Tropical Records. Now if you guys want to support it, I'll make sure to leave a link down in the description below. Any support would be greatly appreciated, and hopefully this video provides a bit of value to you when it comes to utilizing loops in your tracks, the initial idea. Being a music producer, one of the hardest things for me is starting an idea. I kind of realized that I just wasn't as creative as other artists, or I felt like it, until I read this great book called Steal Like an Artist. And the one thing I learned from that book is that it's okay to get inspired from other people. The important thing is to get inspired from multiple people instead of just one. So I went on a run and put a tech house playlist on, and this song came on, which I really enjoyed, and I wanted to make something like it. And the track is Timbaresco, Llego Ya. Now the drop's gonna have this flute, and I wanted to make something like it. Now from there, I knew I needed more inspiration, so then I found this really cool track from Riva Starr called Toma. It had this really sick vocal and sick moment in the break, which I wanted to do as well. Being a music producer, it's all about bringing and making an idea come to life, no matter where you source your instruments from. So if you're a top of the line producer, you could call in a flutist, get her to record a melody for you, and there you go, you make something with it. You might guide her, you might not. For us bedroom producers who don't have the means to do that, or a recording studio to record a flutist in optimal quality, we have to go and use what we got, which for a lot of us, it's going to be services like Splice, sample packs, Arcade, and from there on, you have other services where you can sample off other tracks. So knowing that I wanted something like this, I went to the only place that I could find a flute, which was Splice. So essentially a 4-bar melodic flute that sounds a little rustic. Now putting this flute with Latin house drums that are going to be heavy like this. Personally, my artistic side just wanted to process the flute and modernize it. So in order to do this, this is where a little bit of knowing how to mix comes into play. First off, used a mono here where we lowered the width of the flute down to center it a bit more. From there, auto-tune to make sure the flute would remain in key. I just didn't really like the way it was sounding. So again, auto-tune's gonna have this cool instrument mode which you can apply. There, OTT, if you ever want to kill warmth on anything and provide highs, you can always apply OTT. Just make sure not to put it at 100% where you kill the dynamics, but have it somewhere low. Obviously, I didn't follow that rule because this thing's almost hitting 69%, but I put it at 60. From there, an EQ8 to what I felt made it sound muddy. Fat filter Saturn to add more harmonics to the flute, aka also boost some of the highs and mids to get it to pop out more in the mix and a little bit more brightness. Now from here, erosion was used, which is a cool Ableton effect, which adds this noise modulation to anything. To me, it just sounded like it added noise. And the idea is, again, when you hear this flute by itself, sounds clean, but again, when adding erosion, it sort of creates a little bit more brightness, adds more texture, as we would say. So when we play this in the track sounds fuller because of this extra added noise. When it comes to processing, I also love to use Neutron 3. When I have processed it and I'm like, could it sound better? I'll use the Mix Assistant just to kind of give me a few pointers here. Now you can see I did decide to keep the exciter, which saturates more. I got rid of the compressor because we OTT'd it and it's already like squashed to death. Now, the next problem that arises when using a loop like this is going to be the fact that, hey, you're using a loop, you cannot change the melody, you cannot add variation, and you're going to have to make this thing interesting for roughly 5 minutes. So how do you do that? Well, when you're a producer, you need to have a lot of skills, one of them being arrangement, songwriting, etc. So one of the decisions we decided to make with this flute is not to allow it to play throughout the song. Me and Hatinga just decided to maybe foreshadow it in the beginning, but not give it away. Because again, if we give it away, then you're going to get tired of the flute. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing, as we know. Foreshadowing the flute is a great way to do this. So again, we're just going to have the flute. Voy, donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea, papi. Voy, donde quiero con cualquiera, Stutters. Donde sea, Now, in the first drop, we decided not to use it. Again, this allows us to have somewhere to go with the song. If we put the flute here, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot, because now the second drop, when the flute comes back in, we need to figure out what else we can add to change it up from the first drop. Finally, in the break before the second drop, the flute is going to get filtered in where it's going to reveal the full out melody. From there, we only allow the first part of this flute melody to play, and the reason for that is strategic, again, because in the last drop, we're going to let this flute just go ham, and the idea is that people are going to be going crazy, and hopefully they'll be back from the bar after they bought a Corona. So in order to make this work, we optimize the flute where it's a call and response sort of vibe, so it's... Biggest mistakes I see with my students when they make music is if they use a loop is that they'll just do this and then duplicate it across on the drop. That's a surefire way to making the track sound like it lacks contrast, like it's going nowhere, and aka boring. Now, there's exceptions always, but majority of the time this leads to bad stuff. So try and be a little bit creative with the loop. It doesn't mean you got to chop it up, reverse it, and do crazy stuff to it. It just means, you know the limitations, make it work. The second big loop in this track is going to be obviously the vocal sample. And I picked this vocal sample because of the reference Toma. I wanted the same vibe that Riva Starr created with this track. And the idea and closest thing I got to that was this vocal I found from Males called Voy Donde Quiero, which sounds like this.
Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi. Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi. Voy.
We use it here in the first break of this track, which is a small break to get into the main drop.
Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi. Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi.
From there, in the second part of the break, we utilize the vocals again, adding a bit of filtering and automations in order to introduce the flute melody and also to just progress the track.
Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi. Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi.
From there, we go back into vocal chop mode for the vocals to create the modified bridge, as I like to call it. So pretty much a lot of my experience with listening to this music is not at the club, but running. And I always remember in these tracks that would raise the energy level before going into the real bridge. I would always enjoy them a lot more because I would run faster in these sections. So there's like this massive matriarch uplifter, and then it has this very NASA delay at the end, which is utilized over there where you modify and modulate the time, and it creates this really cool effect. From there, we go into one of the inspirations for this track, which was that Riva Starr breakdown, where he has the vocal and has a lot of stutters going. I wanted to do that, but I wanted to give it my own little twist. So what I decided to do was add this cool little reverb, which is more of an ambience reverb. So the idea is to create layers for the vocal with this guy, which will make the vocals sound metallic and add that vibe to it, but only on the stutters. So the vocal goes something like this.
Voy donde quiero con cualquiera, donde sea papi. No, no soy tuyo ni orgullo, no sea bruto papi. No es tu problema, no te quema que quiere y no me importa, que no soy asquerosa.
You can think of it as adding harmony or layers to the vocal, and the idea is again to emphasize that because we're about to go into the build.
Soy asquerosa, soy asquerosa, soy asquerosa, soy asquerosa, soy asquerosa.
And then as the vocal does that, there's this other vocal coming up that sounds like this. Now, the purpose of this video was to promote the track, but I also wanted to provide value to you guys because recently I've been getting a lot of DMs from people saying they watched this masterclass where this tech house producer had a track that has a lot of plays and all he did was put a bunch of loops together. Now, everyone's going to have their opinion on whether that's right or wrong. For me, I think it's fine to use loops and create something with them, start the song with it, and revolve a whole track around it because, again, back then I was like you guys where oh, this is cheating and whatnot, until I finally did it myself and realized it's not as easy as it seems. However, I respect everyone's opinion on the matter, and I wanted to show you guys an example of where I did something similar. Of course, not everything is going to be a loop, but the main elements are, and without the loops, the track doesn't exist. So make sure to leave your comment down below. Do you still consider this cheating with all the work being put in, or do you think it's totally fair? What are your thoughts on it? I'm curious to read. Now, if you guys want to support my channel, you can check out this track over at Tracksource. I'll leave the description down below. And if you want to support my sound design work, you can find it over at evilsounds.com, or you can find all of my presets being used by the likes of West and Tubin Merger, James Hype. I think the list goes on. It's a blessing to have these guys using the patches. It definitely gets me amped to create more for you guys, and hopefully you guys are enjoying them as well. With that being said, hopefully this video provided a bit of value to you, and I'll catch you guys next time. You guys take care, and you guys have a great rest of your day.